Hey everyone, Cynics here, and today I'm going to be talking about using paper textures in Corel Painter. So apologies to all of my non-Corel users, but don't slam off the video just yet because I'm definitely going to be including some speed paintings and other fun tips as well. Anyway, this all started the other week when I decided to do a quick stylized reference painting of a Chinese actress, Jing Tian. I knew a little texture on her clothing would go a long way in making the piece look good, but I didn't really have any good tricks to do it by hand, so I realized it would be a great time to experiment with the paper texture feature in Corel Painter, which just lets you set a canvas texture which will get picked up by different types of media. The results were pretty good for a speed paint, and a lot of people actually asked if I could explain what I did to get that texture, so here we go. I'll do a quick walkthrough of the same process. I'm going to borrow one of my corner kit characters for just a minute. So this is of course Nisei. She's the nerdy one and she wears a sweater, so it will do perfectly. The first thing we have to do is open the Papers panel, which can be found up in the Windows tab along the top, or just by hitting Control 9. Then we will also need a brush that will work well with paper textures. So most of the pastel and chalk brushes work, but I think the real fat chalk works pretty great for all of my purposes. You can see here that it only picks up the paper texture and nothing else. It's good to get a little familiar with the paper settings, so I recommend cranking up the scale of the paper a lot, as well as the brightness and contrast. This will make everything far more dramatic. Now we just need to find the right paper. So there's a lot of good ones that might have all sorts of potential down the road, but for now I think we'll have to go with the ribbed pastel for our painting pleasure. The most important thing I'm actually going to be doing when painting in this cloth texture is constantly rotating the paper texture slightly in order to simulate that the lines are following the form of the body. I think it looks good to handle one direction of lines and then come back after with a perpendicular coat of texture to really sell the whole woven look. If you want to get extra fancy, you can even vary the scale of the texture to show the weave becoming more compact as it wraps away, or maybe to show folds and creases. I'm also changing the color of the chalk here and there just to show more form and shadow. I'm definitely not an expert, so I'm just kind of feeling this out as I go along, but the only other tip I have from my long history of trying this twice is that it looks pretty good if you add a collar or hem to the end of all the fabric. So that can be done by simply adjusting the scale and trying to get some lines that really lead into the opening and have a very defined line to them. Alright, I think that's about it for this example. Hopefully this fresh new texture can help Nisei forget all about her dead twin brother. Oh, wait, is that a spoiler? Whatever. Now I could have just wrapped things up here, but I honestly went on a bit of a tear trying to apply this technique to all sorts of things. I was especially curious to see if I could make a weave texture that looked even thicker and fluffier. This is also a good excuse to let the whole world know about my secret love affair with amigurumi. You know, those adorable little yarn animals and things. Anyway, first off, I just have to try painting a little yarn cactus. I did a quick speed painting of a basic form with a little bit of shading thrown in and then just attacked it with the paper texture. There isn't too much form following going on here. I'm just making a basic weave across the whole thing. Super simple, not much effort going on. The most important thing is having two black plastic looking eyes and a little bit of blush, which by the way, the colorized brush does a wonderful job of making it look like a little dab of color on the cheek. So this one turned out okay. It has a texture, but it still doesn't look super yarny. It's time for attempt number 2, and this time I'll paint a little yarn version of my annoying cockatiel Pichu. The same basic approach applies, just a quick speed paint of the basic form with the proper local colors and a little form shading thrown in. For the texture though, I'm going to try to make it a tad larger and do my best to smudge it around in order to follow the form. So after a lot of warping, I think the biggest problem I'm having is trying to find the right amount of light and shadow on the texture itself. It definitely requires some further fine-tuning. I do, however, quite like how the tail came out. It looks very subtle and realistic. The main body got a bit too chaotic and messy with the texture, but from a quick glance, it somewhat captures the basic feeling of woven yarn. I think it's mainly the variation of different textures that helps sell it. I don't think it would read nearly as well without the contrast of different materials scattered around. In the end, I guess they're not too bad for around 15 to 20 minutes of work each. It's definitely an idea I wouldn't mind coming back to in the future. At this point, I decided to get even more experimental with techniques, but first I need some test subjects. So this is actually a skin tone practice I did from imagination on stream. I think it came out alright. It felt like a struggle at first, but once I started dialing back the contrast and making everything more subtle and mid-tony, the skin definitely started to look fairly believable. I definitely have the most fun with the slight creases in the skin, as well as airbrushing in those little hue shifts so the elbows become a bit more red and areas like the middle of the back become more pale. Always bring in those hue variations. It's the key to good skin. Oh, anyway, I think this might actually be a good time to take a quick breather from all this educational stuff and maybe shadow walk into the realm of paint exploration for a little bit. Really, there's nothing that feels better than morphing a nearly finished painting into something unexpected. And while we sit back and enjoy the stranger side of creativity, I will have to say that Stranger Things is my mini monthly inspiration for you guys. I know you've probably been fully saturated in all the recommendations and references to it lately, but I'm willing to further splash you guys and say go watch it. It's on Netflix and it's wonderful. Okay, that's it. Sorry about the creepy, crawly, upside down back monster. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled tutorial. So for this experiment, I thought it would be fun to try a really loose woven see-through top. The main reason being that I was curious to try combining all this painted texture stuff with some alpha channel transparency nonsense in Photoshop. So in order to do that, I'm going to make this texture on a pure black layer set to lighten. So of course I have to use just white to paint the texture itself. This time, since everything will be far more visible, I'm being even more careful and deliberate with rotating the paper texture constantly to follow the form. The contrast and brightness have also been bumped up to make the paper texture have even more negative space. I think I actually inverted the texture as well, in case you're curious. Since this is all being done on a black lighten layer, it's important to remember that painting with black is actually the only proper way to erase any mistakes or white lines you don't want. Once everything has been filled in, I can move into Photoshop and copy everything that is on the black and white texture layer. Then I can create a new layer and click the little circle inside a box icon down below the layers in order to make a mask for this layer. Now you can just click the mask part of the layer and go into the channels and paste the black and white texture layer in there. Sorry, this is probably all super confusing if you've never used a mask before, but now you'll see that I have a perfect mask of our loose woven top. You can paint it any color you want, wherever you want, and it will only affect the mesh. This is a good time to start adding form lighting to everything and play with the hues a bit. You could even add cool designs and patterns if you wanted. Theoretically, you could just get a very similar result if you simply painted very carefully the first time and locked the layer transparency. But I think this technique provides a much greater control over the transparencies in the initial painting process. But who knows, maybe I'm just stupid. One thing I did add was a duplicate layer that I used to turn into a subtle drop shadow for our mesh. I think that might add a little more realism, but I'm still struggling with the quality of the texture itself. Even after it's all somewhat finished, I can't say that this experiment was a pure success. It definitely still looks like a paper texture and doesn't quite transcend beyond that. Clearly this video could have been wrapped up by now, but I have one more adventure for you guys. This time I decided to stop messing around with cloth textures and actually explore the other possibilities that are waiting for us. One of the viewers in the Twitch stream had suggested that I try a snowy environment, so I did my best to whip up a quick one, which wasn't too bad. Each of the hills and rocks and even the sky are all just individual strokes of the dry brush. I decided to throw in a super basic red mech because red goes great in the winter, although I wish that design could have been a bit more striking. Next, I just tried to carve out the planes a little bit more and add a splash of personality, and it's pretty much done, all in the course of about 30 minutes. So this makes a good playground to test out some paper textures on an environment. I pretty much tried out any one I could. The only real guideline is that you want more chaotic papers for organic stuff and generally more basic patterns for the industrial stuff. I think it's okay to go a bit overboard since the only real goal is to create the illusion of detail through chaos. I think overall, I prefer any paper pattern that has a strong directional sense to it. That way you get to really focus on using rotation to define all the planes. It's nice when each hill gets its own little directional slopey texture. In the end, I think this definitely turns a rough painting into something that looks a bit less lazy, without actually having to stop being lazy. I hope you enjoyed the finished result. I had a lot of fun making it. Just as a reminder though, adding textures won't turn a bad painting good. Color and value are still doing all of the hard work here. This is just a little dressing to go with it. Anyway, we made it to the end, and my voice is tired, so I would like to thank all my wonderful patrons for making these videos possible. You guys are still wonderful, and I'll keep posting fun stuff on there. And I would like to thank everyone else for watching because that means a lot to me as well. Alright, see ya.